Now that we're somewhat familiar with Blender's UI and we've set up our preferences, let's take a look at navigating the 3D workspace. Before I show you that, however, I'm going to open a new window, change the editor type to text editor, and press this button here to create a new text block. This is, in effect, a text editor where you can write notes to yourself. I, however, am going to use it to paste all the shortcuts we'll be looking at during this video. Feel free to reference those at your leisure, and also note that I have screencast keys on here so you can see what I'm clicking and pressing. The first thing we're going to learn how to do is how to orbit. This is done by holding down our middle mouse button and moving our mouse around. This will allow us to view different things in our 3D scene from various angles. The next thing we need to learn how to do is how to pan, and this is done by holding down Shift and middle mouse button. This will slide our view left, right, up, and down, and all around based on what we'd like to view. The last thing we'll learn how to do in terms of navigating the 3D workspace is zoom. This is done by moving the scroll wheel forward and back. By combining these three moves, we can very easily move around and navigate our workspace. Now, if you don't have a 3-button mouse, this can be kind of difficult. So I suggest going back and checking out the preferences section of our tutorial so that you can know how to emulate a 3-button mouse and all the stipulations that come with doing so. If, however, for some reason you don't have a 3-button mouse and you don't want to emulate one, you do have what's available to you, which is fly mode. This is activated by pressing Shift F, and you can see it's worked because your mouse pointer will now turn into a pair of crosshairs, and the movement of your view will actually be constrained to the movement of your mouse without needing any additional keys. In order to move around the space using this view, we can actually use the W, A, S, and D keys, which is familiar to some simulators, games, and game engines. In order to speed up some of our movement, all we need to do is hold the Shift key while we move around with W, A, S, and D, and now we can view our scene from multiple angles, zoom in on things, and move around in somewhat of an intuitive way. The cool thing about this is, once you've found a view that you would like to accept, all you have to do is press the left mouse button, and it will accept your view. And if you don't like the view that you have, once you've entered into fly mode, and you'd like to revert to the view you had prior to entering it, all you have to do is click the right mouse button, and it will revert your view back to before when you entered fly mode. Now, this is something very familiar to Blender. When you learn to manipulate geometry, many times you'll be asked to confirm the manipulation. If you'd like to revert it to prior to trying to manipulate it, all you have to do is use a right mouse click. Just keep that in mind, and I'll make note of it in later videos. Now, some other useful hotkeys to know about the 3D viewport are, if you pay attention to this little ring in the center, this is called the 3D cursor. You can move it around using the right mouse button. This little cursor is going to be used when we ask Blender to place meshes in the scene, and it will drop in our 3D meshes wherever this cursor is. This cursor can also be used for aligning meshes together in various surfaces, but it's important that we keep it under control. And by clicking randomly into the space, it's not really under control. So in order to get it back under control, we have the shortcut Shift-C, which will center our cursor in the center of the world, as well as pull back our viewpoint so we can see all of the objects within our world. And as you can see, we had a cube that was way out in the void, and now we can see it. Likewise, if there's an object that's in a far away and inconvenient place, or that's off screen, we can actually find it and click it. And if it's off screen, we can find it in our outliner and click it there. And the hotkey that we want to zoom in on that specific object is the period key on the NumPad. So for example, because the other cube is off screen now, if we wanted to zoom into that, find it in our outliner, click on it and press the period key, and we'll zoom right over to it. And now you can see we're over here with this new cube. Likewise, I can do the same with the center cube. Period on the NumPad. Make sure you're in the 3D viewport, otherwise it won't register. And there we go. Now, if you want to see all the objects that are in your scene, simply hit the Home key on your keyboard, and similar to Shift-C, it will zoom us all the way out so we can see all of the objects that are in our scene. Now, in addition to the things that we've learned so far, there are actually a number of keyboard shortcuts that we can use on the NumPad for manipulating our view. As we have listed here, hitting 1 on the NumPad will give us a front view. Hitting 3 on the NumPad will give us a side view. Hitting 7 on the number pad will give us a top view, and hitting 9 will give us a negative view. And what I mean by that is even if we're in a camera view such as this, and we hit the 9 key, we'll actually flip around to the opposite side of the 3D canvas. Alternatively, when we're using the number pad keys, if we hold down Control and press the same key, so in this instance 1, we can actually get an opposite view. So if 1 gives us a front view, if we can hit Control and 1, we'll get a back view. If we hit 7 and get a top view, hit Control and 7 and we'll get a bottom view. Likewise with 3 and the side view, hitting Control and 3 will give us the opposite side. Now if you have a camera in your scene, such as we have here, what you can do in order to look through the camera is to hit the 0 key. And you can tell that that's worked because you'll be able to see that there's a darkened and shaded area here, which represents everything that's outside of the view of the camera. And everything inside the frame of the camera will actually be represented normally with this normal shading. In order to exit the camera view, all we need to do is orbit out, zoom out, pan out, and sometimes even using some of the other zooming hotkeys can bring us out of our camera. Later on, when we talk about rendering, we'll talk about how to move and manipulate this camera specifically from the camera viewpoint, as well as how to align this camera to our current viewpoint. But don't worry, that's coming soon. Now in addition to the number pad views, we also have the ability to nudge our camera. These are easy to remember based on where the numbers are placed on the keyboard. For example, 8 will move us up, 2 will move us down, 8 being at the top, 2 being at the bottom. 4 will move us left, and 6 will move us right, 4 being at the left and 6 being at the right. In addition to all of this, if you pay attention to the top here, you'll see that we have what's called user Persp. What this means is that we're in a perspective view. If we'd like to switch that into an isometric orthographic view, we only need to hit the 5 key on the keyboard, and you'll notice this has changed to user Ortho. What this does is it gives us a more isometric view of everything in our scene. Everything seems like it's all the same size, there's really no foreshortening, and our vanishing points have disappeared. However, when we switch into user Persp, you can see we do have a vanishing line here, and we do have perspective and foreshortening. So that can be very useful for checking out your objects from different views, making sure you understand what's going on. So this more than covers everything we'll need to know about navigating the workspace. Join us in the next section of the tutorial to learn how to manipulate geometry.